When you think of a glacier, what comes to mind? Probably these silent, frozen giants, right? Just sitting at the Earth's poles. But what if I told you that these huge blocks of ice are actually the most powerful sculptors on our entire planet? Today, we're going to uncover how these slow-moving rivers of ice have literally carved the world we live in.
It's a pretty wild paradox when you think about it. How can something that's, frozen solid be one of the most dynamic and destructive forces in nature? Well, that's the big question we're digging into today. How this solid ice can move with enough force to reshape entire continents.
So, first things first. The best way to think about a glacier is like nature's own frozen bulldozer. We're going to start by defining what this incredible force of nature really is, and, more importantly, what gets it moving in the first place.
So, what is a glacier, really? It's so much more than just a big chunk of ice. It all starts with a single snowflake. Now imagine billions upon billions of them falling year after year, piling up and getting crushed under their own incredible weight. Over centuries, all that pressure transforms that fluffy snow into this super dense blue glacial ice. And that's how you get a slow-moving river of pure power.
Now, the recipe for making a glacier is actually surprisingly simple. You just need two basic things. First, you need more snow to fall in the winter than melts away in the summer. And second, temperatures have to stay cold all year round. Once that ice gets heavy enough, and we're talking trillions of tons, gravity just takes over. It starts pulling the whole mass downhill, grinding over the bedrock with unimaginable force.
Okay, so now we know what they are and how they get moving. Let's get to the good part, the action. How do these frozen bulldozers actually sculpt the Earth? Well, it all boils down to a really powerful two-step carving process. The two secret weapons in a glacier's toolkit are plucking and abrasion. And yeah, they sound a little dramatic, and honestly, they are. These two processes work together to tear down mountains and carve out entire valleys. First up is plucking. Picture this: a glacier is sliding over some fractured bedrock. Little bits of meltwater seep down into the cracks in the rock, and then they refreeze. This process basically glues the rock to the bottom of the glacier, so when the ice moves forward, it just rips or plucks these massive chunks of rock right out of the ground and carries them along for the ride. And that brings us to the second method, abrasion. See, all those rocks that just got plucked from the ground are now stuck to the bottom of the glacier. They're not just getting a free ride. As the ice moves, these embedded rocks act like giant, coarse sandpaper, grinding and scraping and polishing the bedrock below. If so powerful, it leaves behind these long scratches called striations. So, what happens when you have all this plucking and abrading going on for thousands of years? Well, you get some of the most dramatic and beautiful landscapes on the planet. This is the signature work of a glacier, and I promise, once you know what to look for, you'll start seeing it everywhere. Let's look at the most classic example. A river, over time, carves out a sharp V-shaped valley. But a glacier? That's a massive sheet of ice that fills that valley from wall to wall. As it moves, it just relentlessly scours the sides and the bottom, transforming that narrow V into a wide, steep-sided, U-shaped valley. It is the ultimate glacial footprint. And it goes way beyond just those valleys. Glaciers create a whole gallery of breathtaking landforms. Fjords, for instance, are simply U-shaped valleys that were carved so deep they're now flooded by the sea. You've got cirques, which are these incredible bowl-shaped amphitheaters high up in the mountains where glaciers are born. And when several cirques erode a mountain from all sides, you get a sharp, iconic peak called a horn. Think of the Matterhorn in the Alps. That's a perfect glacial sculpture. But here's the thing. Glaciers aren't just about taking things away. They are also builders. After all that carving and carrying, what happens when the ice finally melts and retreats? Well, that's the sculptor's final gift. The brand new landscapes they build from all the debris they carried. The raw material for all this construction is called glacial till. Now, unlike the sediment in a river that gets neatly sorted by size, glacial till is a total mess. It's a jumbled, chaotic mix of everything the glacier picked up on its journey, from fine clay and sand to absolutely massive boulders, all just dropped in a pile as the ice melts away. And from that messy till, glaciers build entirely new features on the landscape. You get moraines, which are these long ridges of debris that were pushed to the front and sides of the glacier, basically marking how far it got. Then there are drumlins, these smooth, teardrop-shaped hills that were formed under the flowing ice. And you even get kettle lakes, which are formed when a giant chunk of ice breaks off, gets buried in till, and then melts, leaving behind a depression that fills with water. Now, all of this might just seem like ancient history, but understanding this whole process is actually incredibly important. By learning how to read these landscapes,
We're really reading the story of our planet's past. And believe me, that story has a lot to tell us about our world today.
For scientists, these glacial landforms are basically a history book written in stone. They tell us stories of past ice ages, a time when ice sheets up to 2 miles thick covered huge parts of North America and Europe. They are a real-world laboratory for studying these massive geological forces. And of course, they explain how some of the world's most stunning features, from the Great Lakes to the fjords of Norway, even came to exist. So many of the landforms we just take for granted were actually shaped by glaciers that vanished thousands of years ago. I mean, just think about that. The rolling hills you might see on your commute, the lakes you visit in the summer, even the very soil our food grows in, so much of it is a direct inheritance from these giant ice sheets that disappeared long before any recorded history. Their legacy is quite literally our foundation. So, the next time you're out and you see a really wide valley, or a strangely shaped hill, or maybe a lake that seems a little out of place, take a closer look. You might just be seeing the faint signature of a slow-moving sculptor that passed through 10,000 years ago. What stories are the landscapes near you just waiting to tell?